All right, so let's get into the actual agenda of what we're going to cover today. As an intro, I want to just talk around product extendability. A big focus of today's session will be around what we're doing in the Datascope software to make it a lot more extendable. Okay, this is something that actually myself and Phil Duff spoke about probably 5 years ago, maybe even 6 years ago, where I think Syspro had already identified the fact that you can't build an ERP system that's a one fit for everyone. You can build an ERP system that is great for most people, but that a point comes where you actually have to kind of extend that ERP system and let third parties kind of make it more applicable to different industries and actually expand it out into their businesses. We found exactly the same thing in warehousing. This is a common trend where good warehousing systems are not an all-inclusive package. They bring the core of the warehousing solution or the software, but they give you the ability to then integrate into third-party applications, into conveyor systems, into VLM machines, and so on. So a lot of what we'll show you today is kind of more the integration side. It's not so much the core, although we're going to show some of the core, but a lot more of what we've been doing over the last year, and actually in many cases 2 years on the integration side. So under the intro, we'll talk about data extraction. We built a nice tool on data extraction that allows you to interact with third parties very simply and easily. We'll show you that. We'll go into the E.net, our E.net objects and custom rules. We'll show you a very nice sort of automated, integrated solution there that we're doing for one of our clients. We're going to then go into the HTML5, which I think a lot of you are very keen to have a look at. And that is really a whole Android base for the replacement of the scanners. And we'll talk around that and show you how that software looks and feels. Then we'll go into some new software being core software. In other words, these are changes that have gone into the core of the original solution, and we've put some additional functionality in there. And then we've got wrap up with some KPI dashboards and a new KPI module that's looking really great. So that's what our agenda will be. I want to just talk a little bit around the modern organization. It's becoming more and more evident that when it comes to software solutions in organizations or businesses, both manufacturing as well as distribution, that and the maturity of the way software is growing, and that software being ERP systems as well as WMS systems, it's becoming more and more standard that the modern organization has somebody on their IT team that has strong software development skills, okay? Or that organization has a strong partnership with somebody who does have strong development skills. So you're going to see quite a lot of what we're showing here today involves a bit of basic software development, basic coding, scripting, and those kind of things. And it's understood that organizations are going to move that way. If you're not already there, you're going to move that way because more and more software is going to be more open to allow you to script directly into the software. So this is something that if you don't have those skills inside, you probably want to consider moving there, because all software is heading that way. It's where the modern organization is going. All right, so we'll focus really on two sides in the next set of slides. So if you look at the right-hand side here, that's more the front end. So there we'll be talking around more the new HTML5 screens that run on Android devices, etc. We'll be talking about the mobile, Windows mobile platform. That's our current platform at the moment, running on 99% of our clients. We'll be talking about the front end, the normal PC front end. That will remain the same at the moment. There is no short-term view to take the current Windows platform front end, the PC front end, if I can call it that, and convert that into HTML5 at this point. Long-term, yes, but not for now. So we'll be focusing on sort of the front end of the software and the changes we're making there. And then we'll be focusing on the left-hand side on the back end of the software, where we're doing a lot more kind of integration to third parties. So these integrations can go through things we call triggers, the E.NET business layer, the API layer into the software, the data extraction tool, which we'll explain to you. There's a couple of others. There's custom rules. There's quite a few different elements on this side here that allow you to really customize and tailorize the software in your particular business. Okay, and that's going to be a big focus. Right, so the first one we're going to talk around is the data extraction tool. Stephen has a nice little demo here. Let me just explain where this has come from so you understand why we did this. And it really started from integrating into logistics service providers. So we have more and more distribution clients that want to integrate directly into their LSP, whether that's UPS or Schenker or FedEx, it doesn't really matter. They want to do some sort of integration. And those integrations tend to be quite a little bit flexible, a little bit different from one to the other, right? And we don't want, from Datascope's perspective, our focus is developing core software that works in every distribution center or manufacturing environment, as opposed to developing little pieces that specifically work for UPS or FedEx or Schenker or whoever you're dealing with. So we've taken a bit more of an open approach here. So what we've identified is that in large distribution centers, there's essentially two lanes of product coming out of those distribution centers. In some cases, the business is 100% of the one lane. In some cases, it's 100% of the other lane. In some cases, it's a mix. So a lot of bigger distribution centers have a mix. And the mix is some orders that come out as we call LTL or FTL. So they are orders that are less than a truckload or full truckload. And typically those come down, they get picked onto pallets. Pallets get put into lanes. We check them out and we load them directly onto a truck. And then we have what we call small parcel orders. So these are, and this is particularly prevalent in the North American market. With the huge expansion of Amazon and Walmart online, what we're seeing across distribution centers is a dramatic increase in the number of online orders coming through. And those online orders, the profile of them is very much fine picking. So it's an order comes through, it's an online order for Walmart as an example, or Amazon, and I want 2 of this, 1 of this, 3 of that, 5 of that, put it into a box, seal it up, label it, and ship it out. So those 2 modes we're finding, and the integration points between those orders being handed over to the logistics service provider are slightly different. So what this tool basically allows us to do, and it's fairly simple in its design, but simple solutions work well, right? So what this allows us to do is it allows us to, in our normal process, pick down to a pallet level or carton level, check out at a pallet or carton level, label at a pallet or carton level. So we have the whole data structure. We know here's the order. We know the different components of that order down to a pallet and carton level. And then what we allow to happen is the carton or pallet flows to the logistics service provider. They scan it, and their systems simply send us a JSON call or an XML call. That goes to this data extraction layer, which we'll demonstrate to you now. The layer is actually very simple. It then runs a script or a stored procedure in the background, gets the data. So the call comes to us from UPS. UPS will say, here's the call, pass us a parameter and say, here's one of the carton numbers. Okay, our calculation will go off and come back and give them everything about that order. So it will say, oh, this is the customer, there's actually 56 other boxes here, and this is the whole makeup of this particular order, and then they can obviously track and trace it from there. So that's the background of it. So whether it's UPS or FedEx, you see the little FedEx logo there, or whether it goes to a third party, it could be some printing application. During the checkout, I want something extra to print. I can write a third-party application that comes in, queries data, pulls it down, and prints whatever I want to print. So it's very flexible. The way you can create it is multiple different calls. You can go and create them yourselves if you've got basic scripting knowledge, and you can start integrating to other people. So we're going to go into a little demo. It's over to Stephen to show us what he can do there, and we'll take it from there.
Right. Okay, so Anton has stolen some of my thunder already. I was going to run through some of the detail of what we were going to do here, but I'll hop straight into the software and just show you how we set it up. So there's a couple of components that are involved. There's a little service that gets installed with WMS. You guys are already getting that when you install a core product. It's just not activated. You need to activate it by setting it up, which I'm going to do now. Then there's a setup. Once you've done the setup and that service is running, what it allows you to do is those third-party guys, they can actually integrate in using their third-party application. So they actually will get a URL, which is called an endpoint. So it's a little bit more technical, but there's an endpoint that they put in with a port number. Once they put that into their software, they can actually suck in the JSON content or the XML content. So what I'll do is I'm going to set up two simple scenarios. So if I go up into system settings here, you'll see there's a data extraction customization. So this is the configuration tool. So the first one we'll do is maybe RTT. So we give it a name and we give it a description. And then what I've got is I've got a simple query which I'm going to pop in here. And I'll explain that now. So it allows us to put in a query. Okay, so what I'm doing in this query here is I'm simply going to pull some information from the Cisco tables. I'm also looking at some picking slips, etc. And this particular one doesn't have any filtering. It's just a straight data extract that I want to provide some information to someone. So you need to keep in mind that this is not limited to third-party logistics service providers. It can be any information you want to give to anyone. If you have a website and you need to query available stock, you can use this tool to fetch the stock. So it depends what application you need. So we save that one. And what it'll do is it'll generate a token. And do one for UPS. That one, and then I'm going to put in an additional query here. And in this query, a little bit different. What I've told it to do now is I've put in a parameter which allows us to pass some information into the actual query. So when the guys run the data extraction, they can pass in some filters or pieces of information. So we'll save that and save that. And immediately now those endpoints are available to, when I say the outside world. So you would expose the service specific port number to the outside of your organization through a firewall or something like that, if they needed to come in from externally. Obviously, if the application is running within your network, they would just connect directly. Okay, and to demonstrate this working, what I can do now is we've got a little test application which is used to actually test those endpoints. And what I've done is I've put in the local server IP address as well as the name, as well as the port it's running on. I've got my company, and then I'm going to put in my token here, and I'm going to take the filter out. So in our initial one, we had no filtering. It's just going to pull a list of information. If we query that, it's gone and run that query on the WMS server, simply pulling this through. So probably a lot of technical people are saying, well, what's so special about that? Because it's essentially a glorified query that we're running and just returning data. But it's a little bit more detailed than that. And the fact that there's some security limitations on what can go into those queries, so inserts, deletes, updates, we don't allow guys to do that stuff, as well as the fact that it's exposing this information in JSON format, which means if you put that into an IDE like a Visual Studio, it gives you the data definition, and you can work with the data in a concrete object. So you can actually access these fields a lot easier within whatever third-party application you're using. That was the first one. If we just have a look at the second one, this one here takes a parameter of the sales order. So I put in 932 and close that. You'll see it's sucking that data out and getting just the information for that particular order. So when it comes to the third-party logistics service providers, in the past, Datascope has always developed, some of you will know, we've got an RTT integration service, we've got a Schenker integration service, we've got one for UPS. There's a number of them that we've been writing over the years, and we keep thinking, well, it's a bit silly rewriting this. It's essentially the same thing every time, and then we have to manage any changes. This way, it puts you in the position of power that you can go and change that yourself. So if the guys need an extra field, well, get your IT guy to go and pop in some details and change the query, etc. So you can return that information, whatever they might need. And Anton, back over to you.
Sure, just sharing my screen here quickly. All right, so just quickly, guys, there was a question posted whether this session is being recorded. I just want to let you know that it is. The full session is being recorded. Further than that, we intend to break it up into its logical sections and then make that these both the videos as well as the sample development files available on a portal called the DSP portal, which gives access to our partners, and our partners can actually go in there and use the code that we've actually generated in these presentations. My slides have just frozen here a little bit, so I'm not too sure why. It's going to stop my share and reshare if you don't mind. Okay, I'm back. You should see that. Okay, so just before we move on from the data extraction tool, I want to give you two other real-life examples of where this kind of tool is in play currently. So we have two clients that have purchased a VLM machine. So let me just explain a VLM machine for those who don't know what it is. It's a vertical lift module. If you look at it, it's like a storage unit. It's a very tall, big cupboard, basically. Inside there is a whole lot of drawers. Each drawer is made up of a whole lot of segments, and each segment is a pick face. Okay, so we set up the software we set up the VLM in our software as each bin being a pick face bin. We allocate a product to it, and this is kind of a very high level, concentrated, small bin kind of environment. They're very efficient to put into warehouses because they use very little space and they use height very well. But there's a certain profile of products that work well in VLMs. They're not designed for the high volume small part. So firstly, it must be a small part, can't be a big part. And secondly, it is a slower moving item because it's a little bit slower to pick. But they're extremely good where, for instance, I might have a distribution center that has to have a lot of spare parts. They are slower moving, but you have to have them because it's part of your business. You put them into a VLM machine, it's very effective and efficient. So one of our clients, BayRef, has 4 of these VLM machines put in. And what we did here is they've got a third-party developer to write a little application that sits on the VLMs themselves. And the way it works is the picker is walking through the warehouse picking items with his scanner, and he moves along and he comes up to the VLM to pick the items he needs from the VLM. What he does then is he takes that third-party application, he scans his ID card to log himself in, and in the background of that third-party application, it simply sends a little XML or JSON call through to the data extraction layer saying, this user's just walked up to machine number 1. What items are currently on his picking profile? Okay. We then do a little query, just like Stephen's done now. We pass back either XML or a block of data, and the application then grabs that and immediately knows for this user, for this machine, I need to pick 10 of these, 5 of these, 7 of these, 16 of these, etc. And the machine then has intelligence to prioritize those in bin sequence and automatically start bringing the drawers down. So the machine then prioritizes the drawers within itself, and then it starts pulling these drawers out in the correct sequence, which obviously speeds up the picking. So some simple little environment, but very effective. And then I want to give you another example. We have a little video clip here, which we wanted to run it, but it's we'll perhaps Morris, if you can just share it on the Q&A section of the webinar, and for those that are physically in the room, we can share it with you afterwards. But basically, here, this is a second scenario. It's in testing at the moment. There is a company based in Durban, South Africa, that specializes in automated cycle counting or stock counting solutions. They have 2. On the far right-hand side, they have a module that kind of bolts onto your forklift or reach truck. And basically, what their application does is it will ask the user what aisle or zone you want to go into to go and do a cycle count. The user will say, let's say I want to do aisle A. That will call through to our data extraction layer over here and say, give me all the bin locations and the content of those bin locations in aisle A. We'll pass the block of data to them. And then the forklift will drive up and down those racks. And those scanners, you can see them on the bottom here, they auto oscillate. So they will pick up the bin labels, they'll pick up the track IDs that are or the license plates on each different pallet. And they'll actually do an online or automated cycle count and tell you where your variances are. So this is taking place currently in 2 of our sites. At the moment, it is not posting back to us. It is simply taking our data and then doing a kind of a variance report for people to act on. Provided that this works really well, we're going to encourage them to come and actually post those back to us as full-on cycle counts through our e.net cycle count business object. Okay, so that's not in place now. And then the second model, which is quite interesting, is they're quite far down the road on drone cycle counting. They've built a very nice drone module, and it's essentially the same concept as what you're doing here with a forklift or a reach truck, but you're actually flying a drone through a set of sequences, and again, underneath the drone, it's got oscillating scanners and collects the data. So the backend solution is exactly the same, it's just a different mode to collect the data. So I just thought that's quite an interesting one. You can look at that video clip on these guys. They're called Drone Scan. Yeah, and they're busy doing that with 2 companies at the moment in South Africa. So just wanted to sort of touch on that. Okay, let's stop at a logical point. Are there any questions at this point?
There was one just for me on the data extraction. One of the guys just asked, can the JSON versus XML be switched on and off for each specific token? The answer is no. So you either set the data extraction tool to return JSON data or to return XML data. So once it's configured, it's across all of those tokens. And my personal view on that is you should stick to the JSON. It's a much lighter version of communication and much quicker. So my view would be set it to JSON and stick to that. The reason we went with XML was because some guys did ask for that, so it was kind of more of a legacy support.